Introducing National Streaming Sports, live and on-demand sports talk programming that you can access 24/7. For the premier sports talk experience, tap into our Roku channel. Start your mornings with Mac and Jack covering all the weekend sports action. Then pour a cup and enjoy all the sports you can drink on the Coffee and Sports podcast. At midday, talk sports from east to west on the Coast to Coast podcast. Followed at night by some hot girl talk with Prim and Proper Sports featuring Sonja Pearson. Talk boxing on the Gloved Fist. Yankee fans tune in for Start Spreading the News. And there's more on the College Sports Huddle and Sports Scope with Robert Butler. There are 20 podcasts in all and 70 weekly shows giving us a 3.4-star viewer rating. To find us on Roku TV, search for National Streaming Sports on the Roku search bar. Click on the logo and you're in. National Streaming Sports, live and on-demand sports talk for America.
National Streaming Sports is brought to you in part by BetUs.com, designed for true fans. NFL odds, Week 1 and futures. College football odds, including Heisman Trophy favorites and playoff odds. NBA odds of division winners and playoffs. Major League Baseball playoff and World Series odds. The National Hockey League Conference playoffs and Stanley Cup odds. And boxing wagers. Betting opportunities include versus the spreads and outright winners, also during the game. Use our link on our website, nessp.info, the Bet Us Opportunities webpage, for a 125% bonus on your first 3 deposits. Must be 21 years old, and remember, bet responsibly.
Football season is here, and SeatGeek is my go-to for buying tickets. Now, with SeatGeek, every single ticket is backed with their buyer guarantee. We've all had plans change, and when you can't make it to the big game, SeatGeek has you covered. They're the only ticketer that allows you to return your tickets ahead of the event for credit with SeatGeek swaps. So when things come up, I know that my tickets won't go to waste. So what are you waiting for? Download the SeatGeek app to maximize your possibilities and shop live events with confidence.
Good morning and happy Friday. Welcome to the Mac and Jack Show. I am sitting in for Mac and joined by Jack and Keith Engel. Good morning, gentlemen. How are you and happy Friday?
Good morning, and Jack.
Yes, and thank you so much for everyone who's downloaded the Roku app. Please find us. We're National Streaming Sports. Thank you for over 12,615 of you that have already followed us and liked us. We have 24 hours sports without the cost of cable, and we thank you. And of course, Mac, we miss you, and we hope to see you soon. Hope you're getting plenty of rest. And guys, just go ahead and start off this Friday morning. I was remiss a couple of days ago when we were on. Did not mention the tragedy that happened in the Dominican Republic. Unfortunately, 2 baseball legends, 2 MLB players, Tony Blanco and Octavio Dotel, passed away, along with several others, including a governor that was over there in this nightclub in the DR. Definitely a roof collapse. 221 people were injured from that. Just an absolute tragedy, and they're still looking and recovering additional persons.
Very tragic story, obviously. We hear a lot of bad things in sports, and we hear the word tragic used a lot in just wins and losses, right? But this is a true tragedy, and people need to stop and just take a minute and appreciate what they have, because strange things happen in life, and this is one of them. And my thoughts and prayers go to all those families, not just ball players, obviously, but there was 50 or last I heard 50 or 60 people had died as well. So a very awful incident, obviously.
No, at the end of the day, sports is just entertainment. I understand what it means to competitors, how important it is to win, how impactful and meaningful it is. But what happened in the Dominican Republic, I mean, that's real life.
Yeah, definitely real life. And of course, some ties to the Yankees, I believe, if I'm correct, with Dotel.
They'll pitch for the Yankees, I believe, right?
Yankees and Mets.
Yes.
Yeah, 15-year veteran.
Both of them, and Tony Blanco as well has some time with. Let's see which team he was with. Just had it up. He had basically they have a Ministry of Sports. He was with the Tigers and Cardinals. Actually, Dotel was. He was from Santo Domingo, only 51 years old, was 13 MLB teams over 15 seasons from 1999 to 2013. Those teams, of course, ranged all the way from coast to coast, with New York, the Mets being traded to Houston in 2000, where he stayed for 5 seasons. He went on to play for Chicago, the White Sox, the Pirates, the Cardinals, and ended his career with the Detroit Tigers. And he won a World Series championship with the Cardinals in 2011. Of course, the DR Ministry of Sports definitely also confirming Tony Blanco's passing. He was 44, from San Juan de la Maguana, Dominican Republic. He was a first and third baseman and outfielder playing minor league baseball in the United States for 8 years. He made the MLB with the Washington Nationals in 2005, and he last played in Japan for the Oryx Buffaloes, a Nippon professional baseball team, in 2016. So just very, very sad going on. The governor of Monte Cristi, the Northwest province of Dominican Republic, was also one of the persons killed. The sister of 7-time MLB All-Star Nelson Cruz. So just a lot going on. We definitely have to keep everyone in high regards as they deal with such a tragedy.
I think Pedro Martinez had some family members involved in that awful situation as well.
Yeah, I can imagine that with 221 people being injured. Definitely, just we just await the news of everyone that's unfortunately suffered from this tragedy. Good morning to Richard and to Sean. Thank you for joining us, and please make sure you guys follow TGI Sports Talk. Send some stars over to Keith. That's how you support his content. He's on all the time and has great content. So good morning, gentlemen. All right, so let's move along now to some actual news. Here, let's recap March Madness. Keith, we haven't had you on since the fight, the declawing, I should say, of the Cougars by the Florida Gators, who choppled them on down.
Yeah, I did miss Wednesday's show. I apologize. And, a lot of people, I saw a lot of comments on social media that the game was boring. I didn't think it was a boring game at all. I thought it was an interesting game. If you like offensive basketball, it wasn't great. I think both teams played pretty good defense and caused some of the shooting issues that we saw. Both teams were shot around. I think the Cougars shot under 35%, and Florida wasn't a whole lot better. Florida led for all of about 30 seconds, I think, in this whole game. But the most important part of the game, they were ahead, and that was at the end. People are talking about, again, the lack of offense. Cryer didn't shoot well. Clayton Jr. didn't shoot well, but played well down the stretch, I thought, made some important plays. And Florida stopped Houston when they needed to, and some criticism for Kelvin Sampson not having a timeout left in that last 13 seconds. They didn't even get a shot off in that 13 seconds they had left at the end of the game. But one thing I remember from early in that second half, and this happens too often, I think, and the announcers always praise these players are falling out of bounds. They call timeout. It's one possession with 15 minutes left in the game. The Houston kid was falling out of bounds under the basket. He calls timeout. Everybody praises him. I could have used that timeout with 13 seconds left. And Kelvin Sampson didn't burn that timeout. His player did. Sometimes you got to be more thoughtful, I think, of game situation and the time left on the clock. Maybe not burn timeouts like unnecessarily like they did there.
That's a great point, Keith. It drives me crazy in the NFL when they call a timeout because they don't want a 5-yard delay penalty. They burn a timeout. The timeout's so much more valuable than the extra 5 yards in that case. And that timeout could have been used. But the bottom line is this. Houston didn't even get a shot off in their last 3 possessions or so. And even at the end, that 3-pointer that should have been taken, there was the indecisiveness. And it just hurt to see Houston unravel the way they did on offense. When Florida started pressing them, they had no clue how to react.
It was I was shocked they didn't get something better than what they had. I mean, it was just 13 seconds of really no ball movement, and it looked apparent that they were looking to go for the win and not tie the game. They were looking to shoot a three-pointer, but never got anything close to a good look. And Calvin Sampson is usually a better game coach than that. Whether it was poor execution or design, doesn't matter now. Houston's been now to, I think, 7 Final Fours, if I'm not wrong, and they've yet to win a championship. Loss.
There's nothing like the NCAA tournament, and I'm not asking for it to get changed, but if you want a true national champion, it's not a good system to have, not the one and done. You think of the case of Duke and compare them to an NBA team who has, best 3 out of 5, best 4 out of 7. This one and done formula really hurts certain teams.
There's a certain excitement to it, and I don't think you can change it now. This formula is tried and proven, and I don't think they're going to make any changes here. It's unfair at times, but you have to bring your best, for 6 consecutive games. That's part of the deal. So.
Yeah, and of course, the Cougars have not won anything. In fact, they have been to the Final Four all the way back to the early 80s, 2018-19 season, now 24-25, and 2017 also.
Yeah. They went when Elvin Hayes was there in the late 60s. They were there 67 or 68. I think they made the Final Four as well. They famously beat Lou Alcindor, who became Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, in one of the most highly anticipated college games in history. They beat them, and then they lost to them, and I believe in the Final Four.
Yeah.
They beat them. They edged them out regular season, and then got obliterated in the end.
They actually went back to back in 67, 68, back to back again in 82, 83, and 84. So 3 years in a row. Then 21, then 25. And they were runners up, guys, in 83 and 84. And then, of course, with this most recent game, the stat is 93% of the time when a team has a 12-point lead or more with less than 14 minutes left in the game, that team normally wins. But, of course, that's 7% out there that could be accounted. And Houston proved that to be true. Cryer definitely they were dependent on him and Sharp, and they just weren't sharp enough. And all he ended up doing was crying. Because at the end of the game, he was the one, in fact, Emmanuel Cryer was the one that could not commit to finishing that shot. And, of course, Florida took advantage, came back 1 minute, 38-second run on them and tied it up and surpassed them 65-63. Florida Gators all over Cougars.
By the way, so great class from Clayton Jr. going over to him as he was, in dismay, obviously, at the end of the game. Before he went to celebrate with his team, he ran over and consoled his opponent, which you don't see a lot of today, and I was happy to see that.
Yeah, they have video out, and I doctored it a little bit to have a little extra caption when he leaned over the last person. It basically said, us Blues stick together. This is for Duke.
Clayton Jr. was projected to maybe be a top 10, pick in the NBA draft. Did his stock go down a little bit, even though his team won? Because he didn't come up with, the 30-point plus game that he's hit the 3 games before.
If you look over his full body of work in the tournament, I mean, he played great. He was the outstanding player in the tournament. He played great in the semifinals. I doubt this is going to be more than a blip. This is a very good defensive team he came up against, and their job was to shut him down and let other people beat him. So I think they accomplished that because some other guys on Florida stepped up, like Richard and Condon. So I don't think it hurts him that much. Maybe in some teams' eyes, maybe, but I don't think it'll hurt him that much.
Yeah, and so, of course, this March Madness has officially ended, and it's no more madness. Good luck to everyone next season. It's a whole new season. I didn't realize how many people actually hated Duke until we lost. It was like, oh, my goodness. Everybody on social media. Cooper Flagg, only 18 years old. He actually just turned 18 in December. So the big word now is, does he come back, even though he's projected to go number 1 in the league? But he's a kid, he's still a teenager. I mean, it can be done. He definitely has the talent He was leading of the U.S. Men's Olympic pre-Olympic games, and he was definitely showcasing his own a little while back. But does he come back, Keith?
I don't think so. I think there's too much risk to come back. There's NIL money, obviously, but he's going to get paid very well as the first pick in the draft. And I don't think if he comes back, they better take out a huge insurance policy just in case something happens. I think he also got some unfair criticism. He had a really good game in the semifinal. They lost, and people are questioning whether he has the clutch gene because he missed
Right.
a footer at the end of the game. I mean, he's 18 years old. He's going to get plenty more chances, and he showed the clutch gene plenty during the course of the season. So let's give the kid a break.
I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm not saying this with absolute confidence. So don't come back to me and say, "Oh, Jack, you were wrong." I'm not saying it with absolute confidence, but I'm leaning towards him staying at Duke one more year because he's young. He has a 4.0 index. He's a brilliant kid. If he can't play basketball anymore, he's going to make a comfortable living regardless. And he's that good. His stock isn't going to go down if he plays another year. He's still going to be an outstanding player. Okay, what will happen? He might slip from the number 1 overall choice in the draft to number 5 the next year, but he'll make the money up later on, and he probably sees that. It's what he wants to do. He might feel, I want to stay at Duke one more year. I enjoy the college life. Look, Arch Manning could come out, and declare the NFL draft, but he loves the college life. And Arch Manning is even talking about staying at Texas 2 more years. Like Keith says, the NIL money makes a world of difference. You get financial security before you turn pro.
I mean, right now he has a $4.8 million NIL deal, and he also has a New Balance deal as well. I'm sorry, Keith, go ahead.
No, that's okay. Jack makes a good point. Yeah, it's not 100% because there are kids. I mean, and again, I probably get a little bit colored by the fact that most kids are going to just go for the gusto when they get the first chance they get. There are kids who like the college life. You brought up Arch Manning, and I was thinking about that as you were talking. All these, there's a lot of talk about NFL teams positioning themselves for Arch Manning next year. We don't know that Arch Manning, first of all, we don't know if he's going to be that good, which he probably will be. And we don't know that he'll come out. He obviously likes it at Texas because he stayed there, waited for his turn rather than transferring. So,
Kate, that's precedent. Remember a lot of years ago, Ralph Sampson was supposed to be a Boston Celtic. He elected to stay at Houston one more year. And Red Auerbach had the famous line, what does the kid think he's going to do, become a brain surgeon? And that offended Sampson because he valued his education. He enjoyed the college life. He wanted to stay there. Virginia, what am I saying, Houston? Houston, he played for the Rockets. I got the college mixed up a moment. But the point is he stayed at college an extra year, and he was on a lot more risk. He didn't have NIL money. And I don't know what his index was, but I guess my feeling is it wasn't a 4.0 like Cooper Flagg's.
Probably not, but that's a good example. And I think he could stay. I'd like to see him stay, quite frankly. I mean, because I say he likely will go, doesn't mean I want him to go. I want these kids to stay 3 years in college. I mean, one of the reasons college sports, basketball especially, football is not quite as bad because, there's so many players. And in basketball, the teams are so small. And back in the day, you could follow a team and as they grew and got better as freshman classes came in and you watched them play for 4 years. Now you're lucky if you get to see them play for one between the draft and the transfer portal. You're rebuilding these teams year after year, and it's got to be hard on coaches and it's hard on fans because they don't get attached to players the way we did at one time.
Yeah, of course, it's just such, I think, I blame the NIL across the board. Yes, these students, these college athletes should be compensated, but, I feel like it takes the fun out of the college experience. I mean, I grew up, and I'm sure a lot of our audience, and even probably some of you guys, grew up with the mentality, always at least get education if you can, so you have something to fall back on. And this is just not the type of era we're living in. We're living in one that everybody's NIL, and let's get the money, and whether or not they invest it to have something to fall back on financially, depends on that individual. You know, look at Shador Sanders versus his brother Shiloh. Shiloh is now filing bankruptcy, and he's not even in the league yet, just now entering the draft. So you just have to look at that $12 million in debt. You have to look at the individual versus, you know, the maturation level.
Situation, Herschel Walker, he left the University of Georgia to sign the USFL with the New Jersey Generals, and his coach, Vince Dooley of Georgia, said, oh, I feel sorry for him not getting a college education. Really, his college education wasn't going to make him that type of money elsewhere.
And the kids who want that education are going to go back and get it, by the way. A lot of guys do that leave early, so...
and that's what I was going to say next. They go back and get in their own time, whatever that looks like.
And Herschel did.
Have so many examples of
I think it's situation, back to Cooper Flagg, I think he's looking at the narrative where he might play if he went to the NBA. If he was guaranteed to go somewhere like Brooklyn, he might consider that a very cool opportunity. You know, the big market, Brooklyn, New York, as opposed to playing for the Washington Wizards. Could you imagine leaving Duke to play for the Wizards? It's so depressing.
No.
You have this great college life, you have money, and you're playing for the Washington Wizards?
Yeah, clearly not. Yeah, I guess it does definitely play into part where he lands. You know, Charlotte is home, but, you know, what does Charlotte really have to offer? Not too much.
But that might be nice, Charlotte or Brooklyn. Yeah. But if there's a chance he can wind up with the Wizards, I think he stays at Duke.
Good point.
For the Magic, definitely so. And speaking of, you know, since we're speaking about basketball, let's transcend over to the NBA. Looks like the Nuggets, even though they have been well projected to make a deep playoff run, and they've made the playoffs, they decide, Keith and Jack, to clean house. I mean, what in the absolute world?
I don't understand the whole situation. And when the Malone narrative is that he wouldn't play the guys that Booth wanted him to play. So while they're firing both, I have no idea. And you can't fire your coach with a handful of games left in the season. They're still fighting to stay out of the play-in round. They're in the playoffs, but they're only, I think, a game ahead of having to play in the play-in tournament part of this. He won an NBA championship just a couple of years ago. Yeah. This has become like an epidemic in the NBA. I think I read yesterday, there's 3 coaches left in the NBA that coached in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy turnover for any sport. And the NBA's become this is the second firing of a playoff team, a playoff coach in 2 weeks, because Memphis fired their coach 2 weeks ago. Yep. They're in the playoffs as well. I've never seen anything like this. How you fire a former NBA championship coach with 2 weeks left in the season and think you're going to have a better chance to compete this year, is what the Denver Nuggets are trying to say, is nuts.
Keith, Budenholzer, Nurse, Vogel, 4 of the last 6 NBA championship coaches have been fired. But there was stuff behind the scenes. You know, Jokic said he was called beforehand. It wasn't a discussion. They told him of the decision. And Jokic isn't the villain here. Don't get me wrong. He's not the villain at all. And I don't mean to, infer he is in the slightest. But had he told them, and he was adamant, please don't do it, guys, it could have made a difference. Maybe they don't fire him because they hadn't gone public, and they probably didn't even tell Malone at that point he was going to be fired. They were about to fire him, but Jokic was the last lifeline for Malone. And had he pleaded with them not to do it, it might not have happened. Or Jokic said, wait until after the season and see what we do. I think that could have held it off. That's normally the case when you have a megastar. I mean, what would they be calling Jokic? But reports are, and I don't know how true this rumor is, that there was dissension over Malone favoring Russell Westbrook a lot, backing him and all. And I didn't realize Westbrook, according to these reports, wasn't the most popular player on or off the court.
He never is, Westbrook. Wherever he goes, he seems to be a cancer. And you're right. I did hear the same thing. And that's why I was surprised Booth got fired as well, because what I read was a lot of the animosity was between those two and who Malone was playing. aka Westbrook and some other players, instead of young guys that Booth wanted to see worked into the rotation. And Malone wanted to go with veterans, including Westbrook, who, he can be a very good player on the court at times when he's not selfish.
Well, they said Booth was also thrown into that because of bad contractual things.
Well,
they were going out making all these big promises and commitments to players who were rarely playing,
yeah.
going ahead and solidifying their contract. And Luke, Jokic, yeah, he came out and said, "Hey, I don't want to be involved. This was already decided before that phone call was made.
Yeah,
He wants nothing to do with it." But
well,
Jack's probably right. I don't know if he could have swayed them, however, but he is their star.
Yeah. But that does play into the narrative that, Booth wanted certain guys to play, and because he looked bad by giving them these contracts, and Malone wouldn't play them. So you can see where there's some animosity, but you could have waited until the playoffs were over. This just seems crazy to do, but who knows? I mean, Michigan once ran the table in college with a coach that just took over before the tournament and won the title with 30 years ago. But sometimes you catch lightning in a bottle. I don't think it's going to happen here, though.
I mean, Malone had a press conference that he literally was going off, and Brian brings up a good point. The owners being too sensitive to players' complaints, coaches coach. We'll see how this plays out for sure, because now that they were projected to make a deep playoff run, they may be one win and then they're out. I don't know if they project. They have Edelman is now their interim head coach. He's moved up to that position because somebody has to do it, but I don't know, guys.
They did win their first game since firing Malone. The ironic part about it, all these coaches that got fired, these championship coaches, they get a job by the next season. They just move elsewhere. So they're good enough to coach for one franchise, but not good enough to coach for another one. I mean, you go figure it out.
Budenholzer's in trouble in Phoenix already, so
he hasn't done a good job there. Phoenix has been the NBA's biggest disappointment the last couple of years. I mean, awful.
Let's talk about some things. Jack, you and I brought this up a little bit, but this is an ongoing issue. Keith brought up Memphis losing their coach. John Morant seems to continue on a torrential rant, no pun intended. The gun gestures, what have you. Now, ex-NBA players are weighing in on this. This is something he's been called out for a couple of seasons ago. In fact, going on live, riding around with a some type of weapon in his lap on a live with some other gentleman. And I mean, what is the resolve at this point? Does the league itself need to step in and suspend Morant, or what needs to happen? Or just leave it alone? Like, what's the irony and the solution here?
I didn't see his latest thing with the grenade gesture. Is that offensive in any way? I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, Jay Morant, to an extent. Okay, if he has a new enthusiastic gesture, is it really that offensive? I mean, we have kids watching cartoons all the time. Someone's getting hit over the head and all type of crazy things. This latest gesture, you tell me, is it offensive, clearly offensive, or not?
To a certain group of people. I mean, the problem is, and again, the grenade thing, maybe not, but anything with the guns, he gives off this gangster mentality that he wants to be a gangster. And a lot of these guys carry this around. And it's sad that they surround themselves with sycophants, and they don't have anybody to step in and say, you need to stop and grow up. And it's not just Jay Morant. There's a whole cluster of these types of players around the NBA, particularly. And they're not doing themselves any favors. You're making millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, and you're not on the court enough as it is. And when you're on the court, you're acting like a punk, and somebody's got to step in and say, enough's enough. Where's his dad? Who, I don't know if he's,
his dad's, I don't know. His
dad's in South Carolina. They showed him with his dad a couple seasons ago when this first came out, and his dad expressed, his being displeased with it, but he really doesn't have that much of an influence over him anymore.
Well, Jay Morant said he's going to use his grenade gesture until he's told to stop by the league. That's fair enough. So the league has to tell him to stop. Then he says he's going to think of something else.
Is
then
he?
he'll think of something that the league will be okay with, and then he'll be happy with. Hey, but he's being immature. Just play basketball. Stop this silliness.
This is just to stay relevant. You know, Oregon's coach called this out months ago in the NCAA when he was talking about Colorado. Clicks and likes. Clicks and likes. And this is exactly what John Morant does.
Great
He's
point.
trying to stay relevant. There's a slogan that's out there. All rappers want to play ball and all ball players want to rap. And here you go with that same type of mentality. The argument can be made that, you know, unfortunately, Jay Train and I had this conversation too. You know, and I think he was on with us last week. We talked about it a little bit. He said, you know, we pay and, you know, pay money and go watch this same thing in movies. We see it on television, even if we're not paying. It's coming across our networks in every, you know, imaginable way. So why is it wrong for a player to actually, you know, be able to have this situation?
Because when I go to a movie, I know what I'm going to get most of the time, right? When I go to a basketball game or a football game or a baseball game, I expect to see the game and not all these histrionics. And I expect to see guys who act like adults and professionals. That's what I expect. And a movie's different. I'm not seeing real life.
Yeah.
You know? So that's just me.
Yeah, that's how it is. Guys, let's talk about a team we don't really mention that much, and that's the Phoenix Suns. Now, it's a lot of roster building going around right now, but there's been a disastrous, is what some sporting outlets are calling, disastrous era of Suns basketball. It started back when the Phoenix Suns traded for Kevin Durant in 2023, and then their championship odds jumped from 1,800 to plus 450. What are 3 lessons that other teams can learn from how the Suns have tried to rebuild from their disastrous season of basketball?
Chemistry matters. You can't just throw superstars on the court together and expect they're going to compete for championships. I mean, they brought Durant in here when Chris Paul was still here, and it didn't work then, and they stuck. They probably should have moved Durant a lot sooner than he's probably going to be gone after this season, I would think. But to me, again, the lesson is simple. Chemistry is important in these. You can't just put 3 superstars together and think, okay, here we go. But I think that model is kind of dying away. That, you know, the big 3 type thing. And Phoenix tried to go that route, and it just blew up in their face.
Yeah, they did try to trade Durant, Phoenix. It didn't work out before the deadline, but he's not going to be. I'll be shocked if he's a Phoenix Sun next year. I mean, they had success with Devin Booker. They went to a finals.
Yep. That's what I'm talking about.
And you kind of wonder, you know, Durant's whole career, he was with OKC. He was playing with Russell Westbrook, and at that time, we didn't know who was the better player, Durant or Westbrook. They were like the big 2. And in all fairness, they did go to an NBA Finals. And I think, looking back, the reason's a lot more Durant than Westbrook that they went there. And they, you know, and they lost to the LeBron James, Dwayne Wade Miami Heat. Then he goes to Golden State. And we were under the impression that Durant was a better player than Steph Curry. But now I kind of feel we're seeing that it appeared that way because Steph Curry kind of deferred to Durant. He built him up and he took a step backwards himself for the good of the team. But Steph Curry's a better player than Durant. I think historically, when their careers are over, we're going to hold Durant in very high regard, but Steph Curry might be considered, when his career's over, one of the top 10 players of all time, probably in the lower half. In all likelihood, the way things are trending now, I don't think people are going to look at Durant as a top 10 player, maybe not even as a top 20 player historically when all is said and done. But then he goes to the Nets. It doesn't work out with Kyrie, you know, and Harden here. It could have. They had some bad luck in the Milwaukee series with the foot on the line, a series they could have won. And then now with Phoenix, you tell me why something about Durant's career, it's underachieved a little bit, even though he's had the 2 MVPs in the finals with Golden State.
People like winners, right? And 2 of the biggest failures in the NBA in recent years was the Brooklyn Nets putting together their big 3 and the Phoenix Suns, and there's one common denominator there, and it's Kevin Durant. That's going to haunt him when people start ranking all-time greats. People like players that win. I would rank Curry above Durant at this point, for sure, just because of the ring.
Yeah, their last card that they would play with the Suns would be, like you guys brought up, Booker. He's the last, the Mohican, so to speak. A little bit of good news here, or is it? So fans will remember Chris Bosh when he was with the Miami Heat. Unfortunately, suffered from blood clots in his legs, and it ultimately led to his leaving the league. And he never made a return. Now we see Damian Lillard, who has suffered from the same thing, has now been posting himself on social media and is projected, at least according to him, to make a push return back to the Bucks right in time for the playoffs. Guys, is this just, him pumping himself up, or do we legit expect to see him back in the playoffs?
Again, not knowing all the medicals, I don't have any reason I think he wouldn't have a chance. Bosh tried to come back several times from this. He didn't have not success. Well, I think he did come back
just a little, yeah,
success, and then he had a recurrence of it. Mm-hmm. If he's not putting his overall health at risk and he wants to come back, that's great. It's important. The Knicks very well might match up with the Bucks in the first round for it's either going to be the Bucks or the Pistons, it would appear. So it's kind of important to the Knicks' chances, I suppose. Lillard's a great player. He hasn't played great, and that team hasn't played great with him as well as they thought they'd play. It's another team. We talked about Phoenix. We talked about the Bucks. These teams have great chemistry. Those two teams went to the finals not that long ago with great chemistry, really good coaching. And both those Monty Williams got fired as well. He didn't win that series, but he got fired soon after. Coaches get fired because bad chemistry, and it's not always a coach's fault. It's the guys who are putting these teams together.
Well, you talk about chemistry. The Bucks have won 6 in a row. Now, let's say Damian Lillard is coming back. What's the feeling? What's it going to do to the chemistry? Obviously, you would like Damian Lillard to come back, because any chance the Bucks might have winning the NBA championship would be based on them having, Giannis and Damian Lillard, making the big impact. But it really is about chemistry at the end.
The Knicks you're seeing it with the Knicks too. With Brunson having been out for a while, they're having trouble getting themselves back in a rhythm. Hopefully they will by playoff time.
I'm thinking with the
against Boston tonight. Bad loss last night though against the Pistons.
Horrible loss.
Something is slipping under the radar that no one's talking about. There's a possibility if the Knicks, if they tank it their next couple of games, they could be the 4th seed. That means they would avoid the Celtics and play the Cavaliers, who they've always had success against, in the playoffs. So they would be better off in the semifinals, the East, playing the Cavaliers than the Celtics. That's my feeling, at least.
I'm just worried about getting out of the first round, much less the Celtics and the Cavs, quite frankly. And you're going to have to beat this. If you want to go to the championship, which it's going to be, that's a long shot for the Knicks, quite frankly, because their bench is so short and, health is a problem with several of the starters. You're going to have to beat the Celtics at some point anyway, but I get your point. You don't jockey for playoff positions. Just get in the playoffs, beat the teams that are in front of you, and go on from there.
I think the Knicks could surprise a lot of people in the playoffs. I think, a healthy Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns, Mikal Bridges, et cetera, Mitch Robinson off the bench. I really think they surprise people.
I hope so. I want to. Everybody we talk about is a health risk right now. Every one of them could go down, and any one of them going down is probably going to cost them a series. So,
yeah, and thanks to the Minnesota Timberwolves, we don't have any idea what the Western Conference playoffs are even going to look like, because every team out there has 2 games left. Anthony Edwards, of course, dropped 44 points to blow out the Grizzlies, T-Wolves, that is 141 to 125 on yesterday, to move into a tie for that 6th place in the West. So there's now 6 teams: the Timberwolves, Grizzlies, Los Angeles Lakers, the Nuggets, Clippers, and the Warriors, all within a 2 game of each other's in the standings. It's crazy. It's literally the Wild Wild West. So the Timberwolves started yesterday's game needing to win, or they would have been probably automatically on the brink of being left out of a playoff spot. So, big news there, but it's like you said, it's the wild, wild west, and we don't need anybody injured or no injuries to go down because this is super competitive. We said this a while back; it was super competitive.
Well, all those teams are in the playoff if you want to count the play-in round, right, as the playoffs. And some people do, I guess, and some people don't. But they're going to be in at least that. But avoiding that is very important. And you look at the teams that are going to be in the play-in round in the West, and the quality of those teams, at least the top two teams, is a lot better than the East. From my standpoint, if you're going to see a team make a run from the play-in round, it's going to come from the West, not the East.
It's jockeying for position. Like West, the whole thing is, if you're the Lakers, for example, you want to avoid OKC until the conference finals and hoping they get knocked off. So if you're the number 3 seed where the Lakers are now, you probably wind up at some point playing Houston, who's the number 2 seed. And that's a very winnable series for the Lakers. And then you hope a team like, let's say, the LA Clippers could knock off OKC, which is a possibility. And then, if you're the Lakers, you would have home court advantage against a team like the Clippers in the finals. I'm just throwing the Clippers out there as an example. It could be another team as well. But some of these teams are playing, pretty well late in the season. But I think it's, certain teams you want to avoid. And
I think the West is wide open because as good as OKC's played all year, and they've played great, they're going to win, 68, 69 games, whatever it's going to be. It's a lot different in the playoffs, and they don't have that. As great as they play, they got a lot of great young players. They don't have a lot of great experience in the playoffs and success in the playoffs. So it's a totally different animal once you get there. I'm not saying they won't make the finals from the West, but I think the West is wide open as far as who could come out of there.
Literally the West, y'all. And Brian's, one A cheek says, wasn't a horrible game. Go Pistons. So congratulations to your Pistons, B. Strilla. Let's switch gears. Let's switch gears over to some NFL news. First, we got breaking news. Thank you so much, 1A Cheek, 3 Toes, for this breaking news. Breaking, the Browns just signed Joe Flacco to a 1-year, $4 million deal with worth up to $13 million. Thank you for that breaking news, Brian. Guys, congratulations to Joey Flacco. We've seen him make several appearances over the season since he's left Super Bowl winning Ravens team. Any thoughts on this one? I mean, we've seen him even fill in for several teams.
Well, he was at the Browns a couple of years ago, and
he
was well filling in, so kudos to him. It's a meaningless move. I don't understand what the Browns are doing with their quarterback situation. Right. I don't think they're taking a quarterback in the second round, but there's some doubt there. I mean, is Kenny Pickett their guy going forward? And the Browns aren't tanking it. If they were, they wouldn't have signed Myles Garrett. They would have traded a couple of future number ones. I can't figure it out. I really can, unless there's someone, Keith, that they see that they can get in the second round that they're extremely high on more than other teams. Will Howard, Quinn Ewers. They think they could move up and get Jackson Dart because they go early in the second round, and maybe they'll trade a number 1 next year to do that. I don't know. I
don't either. I mean, there are some people still targeting Shedeur Sanders in Cleveland, but I don't see that happening myself. There's too many there's too many doubts about him, and they got too many other holes to fill. I think I would hope they're going to take a quarterback somewhere when Pickett and Flacco are your 2 guys. And Flacco's probably better off resting on his couch till midseason. That's when he plays his best. That's when the Cleveland picked him up 2 seasons ago, I guess, right? I don't know what's going on in Cleveland and Pittsburgh. I mean, Pittsburgh's another team with huge quarterback situation. Yeah. I know you're a bit about it, but
we're gonna definitely talk about them. I wanted to say though, while we're talking about Cleveland, Deshaun Watson has come out yesterday, basically saying, I know that everybody's doubting me. Of course, the ownership, everybody has come out and spoke against him, but he's still saying he's coming back better than ever before. He's not washed up. I mean, I don't know how he's going to prove that, guys, if they're not going to put him on the field.
I don't see them doing it. I think they know they've made a mistake. I think again, character matters, and they've made a bad judgment call here. And I think they're ready to eat their losses here at some point. It's just a matter of when and how.
No,
Speaking
he's
of,
going to be ready. Chances are he's going to be ready to play before the season is over. So maybe that's the Brown plan. Kenny Pickett, Sean Watson.
that's
One of
crazy.
them will, emerge perhaps. I mean, even though they can't be counting. I don't understand the Brown quarterback situation. Once again, I know I mentioned it a little while ago, but what is the exact plan if they don't draft a quarterback?
Right.
And there's no one, and there's, beyond Cam Ward or Shador Sanders. Could Tennessee somehow throw us for a loop or something and not take Cam Ward? It's apparent they are going to take Cam Ward now. I mean, that would shake up the draft if Tennessee suddenly traded down.
It would. Well, again, that's why there's some intrigue in this draft, right? Because I think there could be some teams making moves and doing it. Right now, they're being very tight-lipped about teams moving up and down. Nobody's giving away their hands. I think you're going to see some movement in this draft and picks we don't expect to see. Maybe some moves up and down the board we don't expect to see. While it's not a great draft talent-wise, I think intrigue-wise, it's one of the better drafts I've seen in a while, because you've got all kinds of storylines here, and teams could move up, teams could move down. You can see players drop like Sanders. He could get picked second or third. He might get picked in a 20.
Sanders is going to go ninth to the New Orleans Saints. I mean,
If they don't trade with the
for a while.
Steelers, keep saying.
I saw a mock draft that had Abdul Carter falling to the Atlanta Falcons at number 15. Unless there's serious concerns about his injury, that's insane.
I saw a mock draft the other day. I think it was Mike Tannenbaum, actually, former Jet. So maybe it makes sense why he did this. But he's got the Steelers trading up to 10 and getting Sanders.
That's what I'm saying.
No, I mean after the Saints, the pick after the Saints.
That makes no trade with the Saints for number 9.
If the Saints don't take him, he's going to fall to the Steelers at wherever they are, at 19 or wherever they are.
I mean, unless the Saints will take Sanders, unless somehow they like Jackson Dart more. That would be the only way I could see like that happening. If
they want Jackson Dart, they should trade back then, because they don't have to take him at 9.
Yeah, I mean, I want to get to this big thing that Keith kind of hinted at about Pittsburgh. We'll get there in a second. I want to talk about, before we forget, because we are like 10 minutes left, Matt Gay. I know it's not big news, but the Colts committed a big 4-year contract to him, and they've released him now after only completing 50% of that contract. They've moved on from their kicker, Matt Gay. He's literally a highly paid vet, like with them. He's now a free agent and basically made a Pro Bowl with the Rams, $22.5 million for this 4-year deal. And now they have moved on for him. He converted 17 out of 23 attempts from 50 yards and beyond, 74% completion rate, including 12 of 15 in 3 years with the Rams. He did have some injuries. He is 31, including a hernia that required surgery in the 2024 season. But guys, I mean, this is a lot to just call it quits.
This is indicative of how the Colts run their organization and why they're not winning. I mean, you don't sign guys to long-term contracts and then cut them a year later. This is what happens, and how you end up in a malaise the way they are. They're counting on rebounding quarterbacks to take their team to the next level. And, you can't be, you got to make these long-term guaranteed deals. You've got to hit on them or they hurt you, especially when you're talking about kickers.
I haven't taken them serious since they hired Jeff Saturday as their coach.
Exactly.
The Colts might have the only true quarterback competition in the NFL. I think they're fed up with Anthony Richardson for the most part. His decision-making, getting injured. And, Daniel Jones being there, them getting him. There's talk about being interested in Quinn Ewers, actually, where they might go for him in the second or third round to throw in the mix.
Yeah, they can't take a quarterback in the first round after overreaching on so high on Richardson and failing, and all the reasons you just mentioned, the reasons he shouldn't have been a top 5 pick. They could take a quarterback later on, though. I agree that I think they almost have to.
I mean, Strilla says there's no faith in the quarterbacks. He says probably why we're seeing all these movements. The quarterbacks on the board, there's just a lack of faith in them. Speaking of quarterbacks on the board, and if we have time, we'll talk about real quick this Tyreek Hill situation. Even though he's not a quarterback, we'll come back to it. If we don't get to it, it's okay, because I do want to dedicate this last time for Jack's favorite quarterback in the league, even though he's no longer with the Jets. Pat McAfee does this whole entrance to heaven production on Wednesday night. He rarely does night shows. He shuts down the arena there in Pittsburgh. Of course, Pat is from Pittsburgh, grew up there, East Hills area. Talks about the whole East. I mean, he has wrestlers there, sumo wrestlers. He has Ben Roethlisberger there. Snoop Dogg comes out, performs.
Jelly Roll. Don't forget Jelly Roll. Don't forget Jelly Roll.
He has the Pittsburgh Pirates out there pitching. He gives away $2 million to a lucky contestant in the lower bowl. And everyone is holding their breaths abated because according to theory, according to the rumors, it was April 9th, and he was supposed to be advising everybody that Aaron Rodgers has now signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He even brought up Aaron during the time that he was on air and said Aaron couldn't make it. So that, to me, was hinting that he was going to still announce it. Nothing. Just sputter. I don't know what his reasoning was. I mean, he did announce him, being affiliated with the WWE now. But the fact of all this whole song and dance production, like, guys, like, Keith, did you think he was going to bring out Aaron Rodgers?
No, I didn't. I don't know why I didn't. Because McAfee's a blow. Here's a weird thing. I like Pat McAfee on game day. I think he's very good, been a good addition, add some energy to that. His show is just he's a blowhard, and he gives an audience to guys like Rodgers who just want to go out there and talk all kinds of nonsensical nonsense. And I'm not a big Pat McAfee fan. I'm not a big fan because he's responsible for this poor girl down in Ole Miss going through all kinds of crap on social media, spreading or. He didn't start the rumor, but he put a bright light on it. This poor undergrad who dates a football player. I won't even get into the story, but I think it's ridiculous for them to dive into those kind of unfounded internet rumors and shine a light on it. And that's the type of thing he likes to do on his show. If he would just stick to and again, it's still a bit of a crazy persona on game day, but it works there. And for me, his show doesn't work for me because it's all about clicks
and likes, like B said, and so much profanity. But I'm just like, Jack, he brought out all these big names. Like, you bringing out Ben Roethlisberger, you're bringing out all these sports figures from Pittsburgh. I mean, wouldn't you think if you were watching it that, okay, this is leading up to some big Aaron Rodgers or somebody big type announcement for sports?
Absolutely. It kind of reminded me of what Sugar Ray Leonard did when he was in retirement after Detached Retina. Before he fought Marvin Hagler, he had this big gala affair, to make an announcement, in the Landover, Maryland, in the arena. Marvin Hagler came forth thinking Leonard was going to announce that he was going to fight Hagler. And Leonard then makes the announcement. He leads into the whole thing, has the microphone in his hand, a tuxedo on, about what a fight with this great man was going to mean. And then he says, unfortunately, it's never going to happen.
Oh, my God.
I felt he was really disrespected, coming there, sitting, the whole build-up in the audience.
That's a good one.
But listen, I blame the Steelers. I don't blame Aaron Rodgers and Pat McAfee. Tell Aaron Rodgers, look, we have to have an answer now. We have to have an answer. Either you come, you buy in, or you don't. Yeah, we've given you enough time. Enough's enough. The Steelers are acting like they have no options, and maybe they don't. I mean, if I'm the Steelers, I look towards Carson Wentz. Or someone like that. They have Mason Rudolph. He can run the offense. He's certainly very familiar, of my
Games, though.
time.
Not for 17 games, I don't think, Jack. He's not going to be able to. Again, he can fill in for a few games. If they win at 9 games, they're not going to play Mason Rudolph. Kirk Cousins is going to get moved before the season starts. He's an option. They can take somebody in the draft. I think it's very likely they put Shedeur Sanders, quite frankly.
Kirk Cousins is awful at this stage. He's no better than Mason Rudolph at this stage. People are forgetting.
I don't necessarily agree.
Keith, why isn't Kirk Cousins a starting quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons? Because he was awful.
He was hurt.
He was awful.
Because he got
Not
injured.
awful.
He was awful.
He was awful. I don't disagree, but he played hurt. And,
hurt. He played terrible. Then he got hurt.
And, and the team, by the way, I will remind everybody, they signed him to a long-term contract and then give him no help in the draft.
Wait a second. He didn't get hurt. He got benched. I take that back. He got benched.
He was hurt. He said afterwards he was hurt. Almost
he didn't reveal that he was injured until after the fact.
Yeah,
of
course.
You got medical doctors. How do they not know you're playing injured?
Excuse. I remember. Kate.
I'm not saying Kirk Cousins making an excuse. I think Kirk Cousins. He may not be a great player, but I don't think Kirk Cousins is making stuff up. I've seen enough of Kirk Cousins to think he's a straight shooter, and I think he was hurt.
Yeah, I'm really sad for him because he's trying to get play. He really wants to play. He really wants to play.
Well, Michael Penix
are holding him hostage, and I don't think they should be able to hold him hostage.
Exactly. That's my belief too.
Kirk Cousins is being held hostage. They're paying.
Yeah, they won't let him.
He wants to play.
Michael Penix Jr. is not going to go through the whole season healthy and well. Chances are he's going to have to miss some games.
$40 million holding a clipboard, really?
That's
I don't
horrible.
think that's not great roster management. I'll tell you that.
Typical Falcons. So what happens with Aaron Rodgers? Because I'm gonna tell you guys, I don't think he's gonna get signed to the Steelers at this point. I know some people are saying that they're gonna wait till after the draft. I'm like, no, this hoopla, go home, sir. Just go home.
At this point, you've given him all this power. He's just going to continue to use you the way he uses every organization after this. Because he's trying to control all the narrative the entire way. It's the last place he wanted to go, probably on his list. And I wouldn't bring him in at this point. I just wouldn't.
Yes.
The only thing I don't understand, Aaron Rodgers has probably won a halfway decent contract. And if he's waiting to see whether another quarterback, notably the Minnesota Vikings, gets injured, can't play, and he goes there suddenly during the season or during training camp, I don't think a team is going to give him anywhere near the type of contract he wants. He's got some leverage with the Steelers now. Okay, pay me X amount for one. And, the talk is the Steelers are willing to give him even a 2-year deal. But there's something about the Steelers that he doesn't like. They don't have a running game. Every team's offensive line is shaky.
They're not even offensively minded.
And they have a strong-minded head coach who he's going to build with.
That's it, Keith.
That's why he's not going there.
Yeah.
Mike Tomlin's a reasonable guy. I mean, Mike
Tomlin
could get along with Aaron Rodgers.
I'm not saying he won't get along with him. I'm saying I don't think he's going to take his nonsense. And that's what I'm saying.
Exactly. Speaking of nonsense, guys, it's nonsense that our hour is upon us. We've had a great show. Jack, Keith, always a great time with you gentlemen. Stay tuned on the Roku Network. We got shows throughout this entire weekend. We will all join you again, Lord willing, on Sunday morning for the big sports show. And with that, Jack and myself will be on tomorrow morning with the debate show, of course, with J Train. Mac, we miss you. And with that, Keith will be on throughout the day, and we wish everybody a great day. And thank you for the likes, loves, and comments.
You're watching National Streaming Sports. Over 20 podcasts, 70 shows, and a 3.5-star rating on Roku TV.